Welcome back to the Locker Room Podcast, episode number 72. I'm delighted today to be joined by Lee Hayes. We're following the soccer theme for you Gaelic fans and football as we know it, Hazy. Ex-colleague of mine at QPR, and he's ventured off now not only to other clubs within the UK, but also internationally. A very talented coach, and I had the pleasure to work with Hazy with many age groups at QPR. So delighted to have you on, Lee. Thank you for coming on.
No problem, Ross. Thank you for inviting me.
No, you're welcome. And just before we kick off straight into this, if you haven't already and you're not a member of the Daily Sports Science, head over to the website. Lots of different initiatives coming on. Our new webinar series is coming up as well with some fantastic speakers, and we've got lots of content out there with new practices going up all the time. So please head over to www.dailysportscience.com and check out what we've got available there. So Hazy, I haven't spoken to you in a while. It's good to have a catch up just before we started this podcast, and you seem to be flying abroad at the minute. Do you want to just run people through, because I know you've got quite an extensive list in your career so far. Do you want to take people through your journey and from a playing and a coaching perspective, and give us a bit of insight to where you are today?
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Ross. So basically, I played in England. I was on trial at various different clubs. Watford, one of them. I was a very technical player. That journey made me go to Brazil, playing for two pro clubs out there, under 19 and under 23s. And then after that, I came back to England and I played semi-pro for a couple of clubs. From then on, I stopped playing. I went to university, and then that's how I got into coaching. So basically, I went to uni to study physical education and sport degree. In the meantime, I was working part-time doing sports camps, football camps within London. And then from that, I went into a college program. So I was working, after I finished my degree, I worked in a college program with Tilbury Town, and I played part-time with them as well. And then from then I got a job as an unqualified teacher in a secondary school. And I was working at Tottenham Development Centre, where that kind of, from then, that was kind of the bridge of literally, I really, really, really want to coach. And that's kind of shaped my coaching, my values, and how I want to coach. So in the Tottenham Development Centre, we focus a lot of individuals. So like making players very good technically, ball mastery and stuff like that. The program was shaped by, Chris Ramsey, Frank, a guy called Ricardo, who's a Dutch individual coach, and Richard Allen as well, who's head of academy at QPR and head of recruitment at England. So the Spurs way, so they made it the Spurs way, making players good on the ball, 1v1 situation. And yeah, that's kind of how I got started. And also I was a teacher, so I was working part-time at Spurs, plus I was teaching during the day. So as you can see, like I was kind of mastering my development in terms of working with kids, understanding kids, understanding how they learn, what their behavior patterns are like. How do I coach individuals? How do I make the PE lessons and sessions focus on different learners? So I've done that. So I was doing a GTP, which is kind of, you go into a school, 1 year teaching, unqualified, and then you get your teacher's qualification. So I did that. And then from then, I was still working in the school for 4 years. I left Tottenham. I went to Brentford when they first started their academy. A good guy called Ozzy brought me in. It was an interesting role. It was an individual kicking coach. That was the role. So I worked from under 9s all the way up to under 16s. So I'll take, it'd probably be on a Tuesday, I'll take 10s, 9s and 11s. Then on a Thursday, I'll take 12s, 13s, 14s. Then on a Thursday would be 16s, 15s. And then on a Saturday, I'll take the younger age groups as well. Which was interesting because it's the first time they've done a role like that. Which I focused a lot on small players, like in terms of small individual groups, focus on passing, receiving, like passing long range, passing short, a little bit of ball mastery as well, but he just really wanted them how to strike a ball properly, how to kick the ball properly. And where I was, well, I did class myself as good technically, as a good technical player. I thought, and he knew that as well. So he said, look, I want you to demonstrate. I want you to be very good at demonstrating for the kids so they can learn off you, and you teach them as well. So yeah, it was an interesting role. Did that for a year. And then another role come up at QPR with Richard Allen helped me to get that role, which was individual skills coach. I think you remember that, Ross.
Mhm.
So that was kind of, I worked with all the age groups from under 8s to under 16s. And we developed a kind of like a QPR 12 skills. So you have to work in 3. So you had like all different skills, and players knew the patterns, they knew the individual stuff that they had to do. I think I worked with like, it was 30 minutes a session, focused on individual skills. And then I linked it to pressured situations where they have to make decisions. So recognizing when and where to use their skills, and where, if there's time and space, and up against defenders. So a lot of 1v1s, a lot of 2v2s. And I always had this belief in them sessions was the focus was high intensity and developing players' individual skills. I think I did that for a year. And then I got the full-time job, working as lead foundation at QPR from under 8 to under 11s, which was very, very, very good because, I've always wanted to work full-time in football. So I left teaching at that time, went to become the lead foundation at QPR. And then, yeah, just working with Chris Ramsey, developing the philosophy of the club because Chris just came in at that time. And he helped me, to get the job as well. Just trying to create an environment where players are free to express themselves, not fixed in one position, various different positions, playing with freedom, developing individuals. That was a good, interesting role. Then I moved up to the YDP, and that's where I worked with Ross, doing the 16s to under 12s. Each year I'll take an age group. So my first year I took I took the 16s. Second year was the 15s, then it was 14s and 12s and stuff like that. But I oversee the whole thing, and it was good development. I learned a lot off of the coaches at QPR, very open. Learn off of Ross, learn off of everybody, Paul Hall, Chris Ramsey, everyone. And to be fair, it was good. It was a challenge. It was hard work. But that side I kind of learned, especially helping this 15, 16s about the tactical side as well. You focus more on unit work. Yes, you want to focus on individual, but we did a lot of like unit work, a lot of different types of practices where, we had set practices, which helped because the players knew what the practices were. You just kind of had to kind of develop the players within the practice. And then left QPR after I think six or 7 seasons. Wanted to take a break from academy football to spend a bit more time with my family and myself. I joined a program called Kinetic, which helped players get into academy football where they study full time in a college, and then they play Wednesdays in a semi-pro league and then play FA Youth Cup as well. So I did that as a kind of school liaison. So I was working in a school plus doing that. And then this season I was the academy manager for that project as well. So I kind of made a quick transition. Academy manager, I oversee 2 sites, developing different players, trying to get players on trial. That was good. And then on part-time with that, I worked with the lead under 14s at West Ham I think I started in August and left in January. And that was interesting because it was a different way of working with Kenny and Callum, and also Luke Smith, who's the lead 14s to 12s there. Good. They focus a lot on, they got their IDPs, focus a lot on that. And also they focus a lot on teaming as well, which is good. They organize their pressing. They like to pass the ball. They are big on one-on-ones, but they really focus on possession, getting up the field as quick as possible. Can they score? Can they create? But I kind of brought a different way. I kind of brought my spin on it at West Ham. So like I would focus a lot on finishing, and a lot on 1v1s and 2v2s. But yeah, I enjoyed it. Learned off a lot of people there as well. And West Ham is a good club, got good people there. And then and then in January, I took a coaching job in Japan, a J League One club called Yokohama FC. So I've always wanted to work abroad, and I had other offers in Saudi and just in Saudi, and I thought Japan would be a kind of a better learning experience, more organized and stuff like that. So my role at the moment is overseeing the elite program from 10s, 11s, and 12s, and kind of writing the syllabus for that, coaching the coaches within that program as well. And then for the academy, I'm a technical individual coach, so working on individuals that need to improve, like a forward need to kind of work on his runs. So I'll do stuff like that. I'm just enjoying it. And yeah, being away from home is difficult, but I'm really open to learn off all the coaches here. So yeah.
Cheers, Hazy. I knew you had a long career, so I expected that kind of bit. But thanks very much. I can definitely vouch for you as a nice technical player. There's been a few staff games where I'll just give you the ball and let you try to do stuff in the middle of the pitch. So that's definitely something you bring to it. Just a very quick one on then, or a couple of things on your career. So like you spoke there about, so you went to Brazil as a player. And now obviously you've now traveled to Japan. How important do you think that is for yourself, and getting out your comfort zone, going and sampling these different cultures and immersing yourself in different ways of thinking? And would you recommend it to other coaches, out there coaching in various sports?
I think I grew up watching Brazilian football, so when I got a chance to go and play in Brazil, I jumped at it. In England, nothing was happening for me because I was very small, very weak. So I went to Brazil, and it kind of changed my mentality in terms of football and like different cultures. So I couldn't speak Portuguese, went there, couldn't speak the language. But I felt that football is one language, isn't it? So, once you get on a football pitch and you can perform and you're open, you listen, you try to learn the language rather than not learn the language, then I think people accept you. And that's what happened, really. People accepted me there. I can now speak good Portuguese, so that gets me by. And then I kind of took that experience and kind of done that here. So I think one of my strengths is kind of building relationships and talking. I feel that I'm a good communicator around people, and people kind of like me as a person. So I think that's the kind of skill set I have. And here in Japan, I've kind of took that from Brazil, and I've kind of linked that to here, and just getting to know people, ask them questions. When I have to give some coaches feedback, and I've given it, but I don't go in and say, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that. I've just come in and said, look, what do you think at first? And then I'll be like, no, I'll kind of do it like this. Here's are my points, but however you did this well. So I've done a lot of observing so far, and yeah, I've enjoyed it. I would recommend any coach going abroad if you can. It opens your mind. Yes, you're missing home, but I think if you're a resilient person, you can get by that, and you got FaceTime now, so it helps. But learning a different way of culture, learning a different style. In Japan, they're very technical. They like to play in speed. They like to play like in around the area. They really pop the ball like in triangles and diamonds quickly. But yeah, I would recommend it highly to any coach.
Yeah, it's class. As you know, I went to Qatar before QPR, and it changed my whole outlook on things. Working with different nationalities, different styles and methods, and things like that. Hazy, you spoke there about like you're a technical player. Do you think you would have had your career to date and the way that you got certain roles and your strengths as a coach if you weren't that type of player? Do you think that molded your career from the off?
I think it did. And then I know coaches talk about biases and stuff like that, but I think when like you have a little bit of bias, especially when you watch players as well. Like, you look for players that are very similar to yourself, which is, you try not to, but you do. And then you look at technical players and stuff like that. But I think me being technically good on the ball and, be able to like demonstrate being a very good, demonstration player, and being able to do that with the kids, I think straight away it gains respect, and the players are like, oh, especially younger ones, they're like, oh, I want to learn how to do that. Oh yeah, I see the coach can do it. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've come here as well, because, that's one thing I've noticed here is that, coaches get involved in the games, they get involved in the session, and they drive it. And that's one thing like I really enjoy, is that, you don't have to be, because there's different coaches for different parts of the game. So, I think this has helped me to get where I am, being able to demonstrate a quick turn, being able to do a step over, being able to show energy on the ball. Again, you can't just be technical good and can't explain it and can't break it down. So I think you need both. But if you're strong in one area, then that's fine.
Yeah, and then you know your development plan and what you need to work on for the others. But I do think it's important, especially for the younger ones, and probably why you were so good at your job, and we'll touch upon it in a minute, your demonstrations and energy you brought to it. I remember in lockdown when we had all the players log on to Zoom, and you would do like a 30-minute technical session, and like you'd come at the end and you'd have to do another age group, and you were wrecked because it took that much out of you. But that passion, that energy in those demos, that's what infuses the kids.
Yeah, 100%.
And then I had the physical one, and they were bored.
Should have went first, Ross. No, I think like for me, I think as a coach, like energy is so important, and I think we used to have back and forth about high intensity sessions, and I remember that with you. I used to just say to you, "Oh, look, high intensity all the time," and you used to kind of educate me of like, "No, you got this and that." And we used to have battles with that, but yeah, that's we always had a laugh about it. But
all good relationships.
Yeah, but I think like I think energy, character, and personality as a coach, and being kind of drive the session, that's so important as a coach.
Yeah, totally agree. It was interesting to say that, because we used to have those discussions in the office. Then when I started coaching, I completely changed the other way, and I was like you. So this when coaching, you see it through a different lens, and that's for sure. One more thing before we go on to the individual skill development, because I think a lot of listeners will get loads from that. You've worked a lot in, and it's something that's come up before, you've worked a lot in education. So you've been like unqualified teacher, then you did your teacher qualification, and you've worked a lot with kids on that side. How important was that in your development as a coach, and what sort of like skills did you take over from the education and teaching side into your coaching?
Yeah, like I think I transferred a lot of skills. Like the reason, like I know this might sound silly, but the reason why I've done a degree in physical education and sport, because I looked at some of the top managers like Jose Mourinho, Van Gaal. They all got like that physical education experience. I know Paul Clement as well. I think he's got that as well. Yeah. So it links and it transfers. Like, so for example, if you can manage a classroom or a PE lesson and you learn them behaviors, you learn them strategies, then more than likely you can link that into the session. And then again, you got individuals within a PE lesson which are different abilities, whereas it's the same in football. You've got different standards, you've got different levels. So if you can find a way of kind of challenging that in a classroom, then you can link that into football. Now, I'm not saying all PE teachers are going to make good coaches, but I had a plan in my head that, I'm going to get a degree, and the degree will help you alongside your coaching badges. And, I definitely think they're transferable skills, 100%. And I've kind of, now looking back at it, like being the lead phase at QPR Foundation and YDP, I think that's one skill I used within the academy to help me develop players as well, and kind of build a relationship as well.
Yeah, I think that's important. One of your other strengths was your connection with players, and I think how you connected with them and got your message across. But I think from a teaching perspective, like people forget sometimes that coaching is teaching. So like they put it in a separate remit and say, okay, well, we'll coach them, but you're still, especially at those ages, you're teaching them skills all the time, and understanding and philosophies, whatever it is that you're working on in your syllabus. Hazy, just to move on a little bit now, and there's been a lot of discussion around, we have a lot of discussion here in the group around closed skills. So like the individual skills development that you do currently, and you've done throughout your career and been very successful at it, and a games-based approach and people learning stuff in the game. You touched upon it around you develop the skill, and then how to make important decisions under pressurized situations. And I guess then it's more game realistic. But just stripping it back, How important is it that players can actually perform? And you went into Brentford, I didn't know that actually, as an individual kicking coach, that they
Crazy.
actually taught like the biomechanics of the skill and taught how to perform these skills in a very closed environment where there's no distractions before then you put them into the game itself.
Mm. Yeah, I always go back to the Dutch model, and I know they do a lot of ball mastery, and so a player and the ball, and I think from the young age groups is so important. Like it's so important that the players develop like technical ability, just the ball and them. Yeah, and I think like isolating the skills. So you got your different types of skills like step overs, your Zidanes, your Cruyff turns. Doing it just individually, I think is a place for it. And I would always, I was all anywhere I go, I always do that. So I start off with ball juggling, different types of surface to control the ball, and then I'll start with some ball mastery stuff like different turns, different cuts. One thing I'd always focus on, and it might, I think it's right, is if you're working with a beginner, then you might have to slow the skill down and break it down even more. If you're working with an elite player, then you might have to speed it up. So high intensity, so doing skills on the move, change direction, working on their different foot patterns. But I think like, any session that I do, 15 to 20 minutes, half an hour, I always focus on individual ball skills, no matter what age group I'm doing it. If I ever be a first team coach, I'm not sure I'll do that, but maybe I should, maybe I would. I'm not sure. And then I'll go into kind of, okay, now they've learned that, or that's part of the session. The next session would be, okay, now can I put interference in it? Now can I challenge them? Now they have to make decisions, because we all know that players can be technically good, but they make poor decisions.
Yeah.
Then, and there's players out there that's been like that. So how do you put the two together? And then I think is that you go into 1v1s, then you go in 2v2, so they recognize, so they have the skill isolated, and then now they're recognizing the distance and space between the 1v1s and the 2v2s. Now they have to get their head up. Now they have to position themselves. Okay, well, if I do a step over this side, the defender will lead on the other side, then he goes the other side. So they understand about time and space and when to drive, when to pass and stuff like that. You have to make the players make decisions. So for me, individual isolated skills is important, but I think you have to merge both of them together.
Of course. And an interesting chat we had a guy that's coaching in Ireland last week, and he said the same thing. Like people are looking at it as like two different methods, but use the best of both methods and blend them together. That's what's going to give you the best success.
100%. Like again, like we know that football, football's, you have to make decisions all the time, and you actually develop in players' decision making, and you have to put sessions on that's going to develop their understanding. They can't just stand still and do different types of skills, and you're not putting that into practice.
Yeah, totally agree, Hazy. How would you differentiate that then between, so you spoke a little bit, well, depending on the age, but would you spend more time with a beginner then, for example, on these individual skills, and less time with someone who's got a really good skill base and go towards more like possession and game-based approach where it's more decision-making? Or would you always have the same set time throughout your session plans?
No, again, if you're working with a beginner, you have to be more slow. You have to understand. Like you might have to break it down a little bit more. You might have to put no interference for the first couple of sessions. But if you're working with an elite player, depends his position. If he's a winger where he wants to develop different types of skills, then you'll start with the basics to start off with to warm up, and then you'll go into more combination of skills. And then what type of skills he can do, because some wingers, they'll have like 3 or 4 skills in their armor, and they want to just refine that, or they want to develop a little bit more. So for me, I'll kind of slow it down if they're beginner, really strip it to basics and give them the fundamental skills, like your different hooks and your different turns, your V turns and stuff like that, and then go into more complex actions. And then I introduce like 1v1s, 2v2s and stuff like that.
Yeah, very interesting. And I think it's important for listeners to note, like some of these players, you think of like when they're young, they learn all the skills, they get a real repertoire of stuff. But as you get through the pyramid, as you said there, positionally, you do some of them skills, but like a centre half's not using it because he's going to do a step over on the, but it's so big, it's good ball feel. And so that he's comfortable receiving the ball when the ball gets played to him, and his hooks are nice so that he can manipulate the ball in possession. That's
Yeah.
important, isn't it, to note that, is that you're not just creating players to do step overs all over the pitch or hook balls.
100%. You're making them comfortable on the ball. So even if you're doing ball mastery, they're opening their hips in it. So they, that's kind of linking to receiving the ball, isn't it? Open your hips, shoulders are open, looking to drive into the space. So yeah, them things are really important. Even if you're doing passing as well, like, and you isolating the passing or shooting and stuff like that. I think repetition is so important as well. Going over stuff over, and you always see the best players talk about it. Doing something over and over again, and just not getting bored of it. And I can actually talk from experience in terms of that. So how I become skillful, I used to just develop just doing skills all the time, like literally with a ball all the time. Doing kick ups, doing different types of skills, and that's how I become confident and comfortable on the ball. So that's kind of I've linked that to my coaching all the time.
Perfect. And then just the other one to go on to, so you spoke about your skills development and things like that, but your individual work that you've done in the past and also you're doing now. So how does that differ slightly when you talk about like IDPs and positions? You got any examples of where you work with small groups of players and individuals to develop that side of the game?
Yeah, so like for example at QPR we used to break off and do individual stuff like unit work. So I work with the forward line, working on finishing, working on running in behind. And then working on wingers, like different types of crosses, their check-in and movement to receive the ball, and then they can cross first time, cutback crosses. Also my time at West Ham as well when they worked on ILP. So we'll take players for 20 minutes working on receiving. So I might have a defender that needs to work on 1v1s and a winger that needs to work on 1v1s, and you just merge them together.
Yeah.
So you might have the defender clearing the ball, coming out, and then you have the winger receiving it, and they just go 1v1 against each other. So you're kind of merging both of them together. So he gets better at, so you can coach the defender, thinking about his hips and his side on, and can you nick the ball, can you get your arm across, and then you're working the winger, can you, keep the ball moving, change the direction, can you push it past him, and then recognize when there's an opening to shoot. So that's kind of the work I've done, and I've really enjoyed it and doing individual stuff, because now like a lot of academies and a lot of clubs now are kind of going that way.
Yeah.
Especially with the older age groups as well.
Yeah, so like, well, I guess in our situation, when you get to under 15s and up, you'd start introducing that unit stuff. But that's when you can really coach the detail, isn't it? Not only like technical detail, but also understanding on the pitch and when to move, why to move, and things like that. I think it's really important. Hazy, I think I'm going to know like a lot of the answers to this, but I just want you to give the listeners, if possible, like some general philosophy points that you have as a coach, like even changes, different teams, different ages, but as a coach, what principles do you go by, and how do you set up sessions and teams and things like that?
Okay, so like for me, I think developing players that can be adaptable and solve problems. I think that is massive for me. Putting them in an environment where it's challenging, putting them in an environment where they have to make so many decisions. Yes, they have to be comfortable in the ball, but they have to solve solutions. They have to come up with making decisions. Because I think personally, football is all about a decision-making process. For me, creating an environment where players can express themselves. Like I'm very massive on attacking players. Yes, being good in 1v1 situations, but also being good in 2v1, 3v2. So recognizing when to dribble or when to pass, or when to drive with it, when to shoot. In terms of my coaching style, I like coaches and I like coaches that just coach players. So being command, helping them to understand the game, teaching them the game. Like I said, different unit work. I'll say Q&A is massive as well. You have to ask players questions. You have to get them to feel like what do they want to learn, and then checking it as well. Like in the classroom really, or as a PE teacher. I think another one for me is feedback of how to improve players and being honest. And I think like that's a kind of a touchy area with some coaches, because you can do it in a certain way where players might get a bit upset, but you have to be cute and you have to know what players, you have to know your players in terms of building a relationship, what players can take honest feedback, because some players can't. They'll get defensive. Um, and yeah, but that's how I like to be, honest and open. And in terms of my values, and I've always kind of stuck with three values for me. So being open-minded. So knowing, like, learning off of any person. So for example, it could be you, Ross, as an S&C coach. It can be the goalkeeper coach, of how he plays out from the back, linking it with the goalkeeper. Just being open-minded, like learning off of anyone, learning off of coaches that's played at the top level, coaches that have worked with the first team. That's for me. Being open-minded is very big for me. Hard work, so like just being on time, just working hard, working the graft, and then being creative. So being creative, don't be shy to kind of put your stamp on it. Come up with sessions that are good for the players, but also sometimes sessions that look crazy are probably the best ones for the players. Like that are like literally that you might have 3-goal game, you might have 2 footballs in a game, and I think, yeah, like I said, I've done that at West Ham one time, and they're like, what's going on here? Like 2 footballs in one game, it's unrealistic. But then if you look at it on the other side, you're going to get more shots, you're going to get more you're going to get more 1v1s, you're going to get more overloads, you're going to get underloads, you're going to get the keepers working harder. Yeah, and then you have to check, okay, that ball's over there, this ball's here, I need to be more aware. So kind of them kind of things I've learned throughout coaching is that don't be afraid to do something different.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of like my philosophy in terms of coaching a team. I would want my team to be attacking, a possession type passing team, not just possession, just playing around the back and stuff, passing forwards. Like I find that, not all teams, but some teams play for the sake of just playing. For me, I would like to, my players to be able to play forward when they can, and if that's the first pass. But the main aim is to score goals. So, being creative and, want to score goals, love attacking football. And then for out of possession is, you got press from the front, being aggressive, and kind of like coaching players of how to press, even coaching players of how to play out from the back, giving them solutions. Yeah, that's kind of like my philosophy in a nutshell.
Yeah, very, very well said. I love the fact like we always go to attacking, like is in the forefront of your mind. Because I was always the other way, just obsessed with defending. So probably why we had some good conversations together anyway. Hayley, we spoke briefly earlier about the connection. So like having that real connection with players, and I think it's something you do like very well at so many different ages. How do you get that? Is it something that's in you naturally, or do you think it's something that coaches can work on? And what sort of things did you do with the players to get that connection and get that buy-in from small players all the way through to the upper end?
I think from a foundation level, in terms of like at QPR, I think I was kind of like, I brought a lot of energy. So like I would always just make it fun. I would sometimes have a little laugh and a joke. And I learned this off of Chris as well, is that you have to kind of, what are they interested in? So like to make conversation with the younger ones, like what are they watching? What's what are they involved in? Who's the key players? Like what players do they like? So I would always kind of build a relationship like that. How's school today? What did you do in school? What did you learn? And then I just kind of built relationships up like that with the younger ones. With the older ones, I kind of did the same thing, but more kind of linking it with their development, like in terms of, okay, so what do you want to work on? Yeah, and kind of, I think with any players, I think you have to build like key relationships, like helping players develop, and players have to respect you from the get-go. So if you do something, so I used to kind of especially with the 15s. I used to mess about with a couple of players in terms of, I'm going to nutmeg you today. And they'll be like, what? And then I'll nutmeg one of them and they'll be like, oh. And then you kind of gaining respect like that. Or I'll just joke about like, oh, you can't nutmeg me and stuff like that with some of the players. And yeah, that's how I kind of build that relationship. But they got to be able to trust you as well. And, you know, when you get your message across, they got to trust you and respect you of what you're saying is teaching them. And then when you show them that you care, like if they've had a bad game and you go over, give them feedback and you're saying to them, look, it's fine, like mistakes happen. So I would always talk to the players, and I think communication is key when you're a coach. So that's kind of how I built up relationships. Even here, like with the coaches, I can't speak the language. I'll go interpreter, so I'll go over to different coaches and just say, look, like, how was your session? I'll just literally talk to them. And I have learned a little bit Japanese, so I'll say Japanese, and I'm not scared to make a mistake. And it was the same in Brazil. Like I spoke Portuguese, but I think when you start speaking the language and you show them that, wow, he's actually caring because he's learning the language and he's trying to help me develop. I can count up to 10 here as well in Japanese, so I'll do that in the sessions as well, and they look at me like, oh, he can speak. So yeah, these little tricks help.
And then they come over with the conversation, and you have to get the interpreter back over. Yeah. No, what a skill set that would be if you manage to learn a bit of the language. That's fantastic, mate. No, brilliant with the connection. As I said, it's a huge strength of yours. I think it really is, and I think that the key thing there, like about being passionate and knowing the players knowing that you care about their development, then you've got a little bit of leeway with how you play that. Then sometimes you need to be a bit firmer with the older ones, but you can still connect with them on a personal level. I think it's really important. One thing, Hayley, before we go on to some closing advice that you're going to give and a bit more about your personal career, when you've had so much experience, specifically from like under eights all the way up to, let's say, top end YDP and the PDP as well, how does your coaching change, whether that be like technical coaching, or how does your coaching style change as you go through the pyramid, or does it not change too much? How do you advance yourself through and work with those different age groups and adapt to those different age groups? Because you were doing it like within the same role, having to work with like 7-8 years apart sometimes.
Yeah, I think, I think, Ross, because I worked in a school, so I worked in a primary school as well, like doing work experience. So like, it's weird because like I think working in a secondary school and working in a primary school, they're completely different. I think with the younger players, you've got to be a bit more patient. You got to kind of like I said, bring the energy, be a kind of, you have to be like an actor and be a character and kind of like, drive the session, break it down a little bit more with your coaching, making the games more, more kind of game based, like small sided games, making it fun at an age group. And I think with the younger ones, I always put that in my head. If I try to look at it as like, if I'm in their shoes, what am I going to do? Like, what would I like? What would tick my boxes as a coach? I would want a coach that is fun. I want a coach that is a bit funny, talks a little bit, not talk too much. So like, that's what I would do. Like, I'll go into the session, say snappy words, be a bit funny, and then come out, and then I wouldn't stop it as much. I'll give them little detail, and I'll kind of sometimes just put something on the board and say, look, this is a competition. There we go. Like, who's going to be the best? Challenge them in that way. I think with the older ones, for me, it has to be a bit more structured, a bit more focused on team units, definitely more command, being honest with them, showing them that you can improve and kind of drive that. So that's kind of what I've done in terms of setting the high standards. To be fair, I think all the age groups I've set high standards in terms of high intensity, especially with the younger ones. I remember doing one session where they were just blowing. So then that's where the ball mastery skills come into play. But yeah, I think, that's kind of how I coach throughout the phases.
Arguably, the foundation phase is a harder skill set to be able to do than the top end, right? And there's a lot of top end coaches, ex-pros, who probably wouldn't have the energy, the patience, and the way to connect with the younger players, possibly.
I think I've been very lucky in terms of, from going from, like, because like if you're a YDP lead, you're not going to go to wide foundation lead, are you? Like that, people look at that as a backward move. Um, but yeah, for me, I kind of been lucky in terms of when I first started coaching, I'd done the college program, which was 18s. Then I went into QPR. I went through like different age groups, like 12s, 11s. Then I went to QPR and done like 8s till 11s, and it was kind of like where I've got at that time. I had a daughter that was that age, and it kind of helped that process of understanding kids and what are they into, and what they're doing and stuff. What's the latest video game, or
Yeah, yeah.
like that. But yeah, like not a lot of coaches have done that, like foundation and then YDP and stuff like that. So for me, in terms of my CV, it looks good, and it helped me through my coaching as well.
It's arguably like a different skill, isn't it? Like even though you're titled the same, it's so different to the top end that it's
Mhm.
like a different skill that maybe certain coaches are stronger in certain areas than others. What, Hazy, just moving it on before we close off. So that then what about your views around like first teams? I know you said you're not sure about whether you do the skills with them, individual skills and the ball mastery stuff. Maybe that would depend on the level and their competency as well. But how do you see that? How do you see yourself as a coach challenging that? If you've got a first team coach role, what do you see the difference there between like first team players and academy players, and how you would navigate the connection and also the coaching?
Yeah. Like I've never coached at first team, but hopefully one day, of course, that's my dream, is to be a first team assistant coach. Um, I think like I would definitely do some type of ball mastery, just like for a little warm up, like technical stuff, passing, basic passing. Um, but again, it would just be about high intensity and keeping it high intensity, you know, driving it, speaking not too much, because I know players again first team players want to just play the game, don't they? Um, but yeah, just kind of again just being teaching them units work and stuff like that, focusing it on the opponent as well. So the team that you're playing, what are their strengths or what are their weaknesses, how can we break them down? So yeah, I would definitely do it the first 2 days, focus a lot on possession and stuff like that. And then, maybe like the Thursday, Friday, do walkovers, walkthroughs in terms of the shape and stuff like that. How we're going to press, what formation, what shape we're going to play, and where can we expose their weakness.
Well, we'll be watching out for your career development, mate. You've done loads already, so hopefully one day we'll see you in the dugout at a first team job, and I'm sure bringing your skill set. Last one from me then. So first team assistant role is where you want to get to, but where's your dream job? What's your North Star?
Like I said, for me, it's the first team job. Like I think that's the main reason. Everyone wanted to make it as a football player, but I think coaching is second best to being a pro. And then you always want the best of the best for you. So in terms of, like, I'm just enjoying being involved in football every day, and I think it's a blessing to be involved in football. Earning money within football, because so I could have been doing something else. And that's my passion, is coaching my passion. So for me, like, yes, I want to be assistant first team coach somewhere. Could be abroad, could be in England. Like I said, I'm very open minded. I'll go anywhere. Anywhere, but not if it's too cold. But yeah, so like I don't know where it would take me. Like in terms of I could be working abroad, maybe one day academy manager somewhere, head of coaching. Yeah, it's just right now I'm just kind of getting into this role and just learning and learning off of other people, different culture, and then see what happens, see where it takes me.
Brilliant, Hazy. Thank you very much. And last question then, just to the listeners, what one piece of advice would you give to coaches working at any level, any age, any sport? What one piece of advice would you give to them?
Um, I'll say coach as much as possible on the grass. Get your coaching hours, learn off of other coaches, learn what they don't do well and learn what they do well. And literally just watch as much football as you can and study. And just look at sessions, copy sessions, but make the session your own and add your own style to it. Bring energy, bring passion, bring character, bring personality.
Excellent, mate. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to have you on today, Lee, and pleasure to catch up personally as well. So from all of us here at Locker Room Podcast and DSS, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ross. Have a good one.
And you, mate.
Cheers.